Simone here. Hope you're having a fab day. I wanted to talk a little bit about planning today because, 2020 is coming up and it's kind of a really important subject. And I've been hearing a lot of frustration from people about it. So, I'm sure you've heard this before. Failing to plan means planning to fail. And, one of my clients, Brian, he was definitely in that place. He had these 35 wonderful people on his team. At least they were trying to be wonderful. They were trying to do the right things. And the problem was the company didn't have a good plan. They weren't really engaged in having a planning practice, because planning is not just this thing that you do once. And they had kind of a plan, but it changed all the time. So ergo, nobody was paying much attention to it, which is a problem if you have a plan and some people are executing against it and some people are not. So what it kind of resulted in was that everybody was doing everything, including Brian. And as the CEO, that's not a good thing, because you only want to be handling your most highest value items, right? So, and it's like what was kind of a joke in the beginning, or actually more of a culture tenet, because one of their core values was we all get our hands dirty. It became this giant blind spot because everybody was basically always spinning their wheels, not sure if they were doing the right things. And that's kind of how the company was run and how everybody's attitude was, and everybody was expecting that, which is kind of even worse, because that means people aren't even expecting that they're being held accountable, that there was some sort of real intention on the execution and all that stuff that actually really makes a company successful. So what I saw and what we really saw as the impact on the business was that, like, massive loss of revenue, of course, because when you're always doing the wrong thing or you're not quite sure what your main priorities are, you're gonna be driving the wrong things. And that means, of course, lost momentum, lost opportunity, a lot of really bad things for the business. And for Brian, that meant he was angry and frustrated a whole lot because he felt like he was asking for things, but really nobody understood the why behind what he was asking. So the second he wasn't available to answer questions, people would be stumped and couldn't really execute without him. So he felt like all day long he was just fighting fires and answering questions and fielding emergencies when he should have really been doing CEO things, which is growing the business. So he was basically wasting a ton of his time. And when we think about, there's the impact on the leader and then there's the impact on the team, and the impact on the team was kind of the same thing. They felt super ineffective, really frustrated, not really ever knowing, were they doing the right thing, were they doing a good job with the right thing, were they executing on the right thing at the right time, because things were always changing. And so there was a ton of confusion and chaos and loss of motivation. And that also means when people aren't motivated and they don't feel like their doing is really contribution, it also means that they lose motivation and they lose ownership. They don't really care about stuff anymore, and then you lose so much momentum and effectiveness within the company. So the long-term effect, of course, on the company was that wrong priorities were driven all the time. Wrong releases pushed. That means, of course, unhappy clients, unhappy board, unhappy investors. You get the picture. It just goes all over the place. And, you might think planning doesn't really fix anything. And guess what? I actually agree with you. The act of planning is just a very small part. It doesn't fix anything, but what fixes things is execution with a bulletproof plan. Because if you don't have that bulletproof plan to execute behind, then nobody knows what they're doing, right? And nobody can align on things, and that's an even bigger problem. So you might think no plan is bulletproof. And how, even if I did take the time, because there's no two things about it. Planning takes a lot of time. So even if I did make this plan and worked it through with the team, how do I even get the team to take action within the plan. And you're right, that is the next problem. And that's a problem that a lot of companies experience, which kind of brings us back to square one. Whatever you've been using for planning is not working. So the plan is kind of the way you do it and the way you execute it, the way you communicate it, and the way you consistently stay agile with it and align. That is what makes a huge difference in your company. And that's what's going to knock out your revenue, your team performance, your alignment with your team, and everybody's attitude and ownership over your outcomes. So, have you done your 2020 planning already, which it should have happened in November. So if you haven't yet, you're already somewhat behind. So, if you have, right, are you confident that your plan addresses all the right aspects, inspires contribution from your team, makes everybody motivated, and inspires that ownership from everybody? Because that's how you drive stuff when you don't want to be the person who is the one driving everything. So, and that plan needs to flow all the way up and down your team, meaning even the lowest level person on your team, the lowest level position, has to feel ownership over the plan. And if that's not so, you're always going to be the one who's following up, nobody's following through, and you're going to be wanting to pull your hair out, and you don't get out of your people what you really need from them. So unless you really feel like you can give a wholehearted yes to, you've done your planning and your plan is super good, as in it gets executed on in the right order every time, every person on your team shows up 120% and is the right person to be on your team, unless you can say a wholehearted yes to everything I just talked about, you might want to have a chat with me. So, it's kind of this thing of, this is what distinguishes the companies that really knock it out of the park versus the ones that don't. So if you feel like you're wobbly, any of this stuff sounds like it's not going quite right, you should really book a call with me. So go to bulletproofstartups.com and check out our brand new training that addresses a whole lot of this stuff. And if at the end you feel like it's a good match for you, book that call with me. Anyway, hope you guys are nowhere in this place and everything is going fantastic. But if it's not, book that call with me and I will talk to you soon.